From the banks of Dewey Lake, it's the Dewey Pod Monster.
All right, welcome back to the Dewey Pod Monster Podcast, your podcast about consumption. It is a Friday night in Michigan. My name is John, and with me is my co-host Sean. Sean, how you doing today?
No wacky remark about me this time?
I was getting to it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I was very thrilled to watch your intro to Bigfoot. I realized that someone is finally recognizing that, Bigfoot is just a damn Dewey Pod Monster.
Yeah, I was kind of contemplating how I was going to fit that in, and I knew when I was doing a beer called Bigfoot, Sierra Nevada's Bigfoot, I had to mention the Dewey Pod Monster.
Well, as you should. So, how are you doing
in the same breath? Sasquatch, Yeti, Bigfoot, and the Dewey Pod Monster.
They're all one and the same.
Yeah,
you could also throw in the Florida skunk ape, and I'm sure there's several other nomenclatures for the Sasquatch.
I thought about the skunk ape, but then for a second I thought maybe some other apes might find that offensive, so I was just like, I'm not going to say anything about a skunk ape.
Have you ever seen the skunk ape mascot that roams around Gatorland in Tampa?
I've been to Tampa several times. I have never been to Gatorland, and I have never seen the skunk ape mascot.
So the next time you go to Tampa, take 5 minutes away from beer and go to Gatorland because it is just magnificent. So the first time I went, it was literally like a roadside attraction. There was some chicken wire, and they're like, yeah, we got gators over there. And it's grown into like a small park. But basically this mascot, he's the Florida skunk ape, and he kind of looks like Hulk Hogan, but with black hair. And he just like yells in mono grunts and kind of dances around stuff. I know I saw a video of him at Christmas where he was dressed up like Santa and trying to like attack people. So that's pretty great. So
I'll have to check it out.
You have a family. I'm sure your kids would love to see the Florida skunk ape.
Oh, I'm sure they would eat it up.
Yeah, or get eaten up. Whatever happens first.
Either way.
So we're doing a beer episode today. That's why we're recording on a Friday because waking up sucks. Today we're going to be talking about Three Floyds and some of their beers. We decided to kind of break it up a little bit instead of just doing Michigan beers. We want to talk bigger picture, I guess, for the 5 people that listen to this.
Can I interrupt you for just a second?
Please do.
Waking up sucks? Waking up sucks! Not like waking up after drinking a bunch of beer, just waking up in general sucks?
Most days, yes.
Okay, all right. If that's your worldview, I mean, geez.
So we're starting with Speed Castle, which is a Pilsner. It's listed on, so it's listed really different on Untappd is what it says on the can. On the can, it says it's a world-ending Pilsner that is 5.6% ABV. On Untappd, it's claiming it is, one, it's a whole different name. It's saying Space Castle, but it is a 5.6% light hoppy Pilsner. So I'm expecting with Three Floyds that this is probably going to be somewhat hoppy and hopefully Pilsnery. So I see you got yours in glass already. What do you think?
I haven't tried it, but it definitely smells. It's on the sweeter side of the aroma spectrum, but it does have a little bit of a hoppy kind of vibe going on to it. I was just checking out the can-on date. My can-on date is April 21st, 2022, which I was kind of surprised that it was 2022, so that's good.
Mine's the exact same date, so We're probably out of the same batch again.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised. This has been kind of hanging around on the shelf at my local bottle shop, and when I went today, they only had the one 6-pack left, so I was kind of surprised that, it was just the one, because they were just kind of hanging around on the shelf for a while.
I really like the nose on this. I am using my Draft Therapy Tiku, by the way, trying to stay on brand here.
I'm using my Loaded Dice Dank Vegas glass.
You're way off brand. So
no, that's true. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought I was picking hoppiness up, but now that I've tasted it, no, not at all. This is I think must be a different Untappd beer. They have so many. Any Yahoo can put a beer on there, so. But this one, yeah, it definitely has that. When you said apple, you can definitely taste the apple on the
That's
taste.
really going all the way through it.
Yeah, and it's kind of it's a little grassy too on the finish.
Hey, this is pretty solid. Should be. I'm pretty sure this is different than like lighter for sure, more approachable than pretty much any Three Floyds beer I can think of. For those who don't know, Three Floyds is a brewery out of Munster, Indiana. We probably should backtrack a little bit and talk about the brewery itself that we're referring to. They've been around for a long time, and they're kind of one of the what's the right word here?
They're really highly sought after here in Michigan for a long time because they just got into the state within like the last year and maybe 13 months or so.
Yeah, and I'd say I don't know if I would. They might be too big to be considered a brewery with a cult following, but they're definitely one of those breweries that they're kind of like in the same boat as a Russian River or the Alchemist or some of those breweries that you can only, at least for a long time, you could only get in certain states, and they have that weird like reputation around them for better or worse.
Yeah, maybe like a little bit of a cult following almost as far as craft beer goes. I mean, everything I ever heard about them was, oh, you got to try Alpha King, you got to try Zombie Dust, oh, you got to have this, you got to have that, and then like it's, Dark Lord and all that stuff. And I still haven't had Dark Lord, but obviously I've had Zombie Dust and Alpha King. But those two beers were, my brother-in-law went to Notre Dame to do something, and on his way back, his friend bought a bunch of Three Floyd stuff and brought it home, and I tried it, maybe probably 6-7 years ago. And that was the first time I'd had it. And it was like, wow, this is really different, those beers. But yeah, I think I would consider what they have to be like a bit of a cult following. They have that kind of metal image, all their cans, all their artwork.
They definitely have that.
Yeah, real metal.
I just wonder at what point you become big enough that your following is just I guess rabid following as opposed to cult following. I mean, they're definitely, I would think in the beer scene, one of the more well-known or like recognizable brands to say the least. So saying they're cult anymore, or have a cult following, I feel like you almost have to be kind of under the radar to do that, and they're definitely not under the radar at this point.
Yeah, I'd say here in Michigan, with them being again like 13 months old into the state at least,
right? I
think there's still people that are really into them and pick up, when they see a new release. We're still, I did a video on Juggernaut. No, not Juggernaut. What the hell is it called? Was it Juggernaut?
The one with the big mecha thing on it.
Yeah, like it looks like the Danger Will Robinson like robot.
Yeah.
Is it called Juggernaut? Well, regardless, it was like this. That was the first time around that we had seen it, and I've always heard people talk about it, but it was the first time that we saw it. So we're just like starting to hit that cycle of their year beer, of their recurring seasonal type things, and I think that they sell pretty well still. I mean, I do see some little bit of a shelf turd action going on some of their beer, but for the most part they sell. I know that they did that cocoa porter or whatever it was, or a stout or something, just a couple months ago, maybe 2 months ago, and that flew off the shelf. Like I saw my local place had it and it was gone.
They have like a black and white label with like some death metal looking shit going on it. That's like half the.
Well, yeah, I was going to say that doesn't really single it out much. No, I thought it was like kind of a more colorful label, but I could be wrong.
Wasn't? Okay.
Yeah.
I know most of their stouts that have made it to distribution here, at least that I've seen, because we go to the same bottle shops for the most part, or the same spots.
Yeah.
Whenever they put them up on socials saying that they have something, most of the time, if it's a stout, those are usually gone by the time I get around to getting out there. But I'm also typically not seeing a post, jumping in my car and driving directly to the store. Usually I give it till whatever day I could be out that way anyway.
Yeah, for me, I'm the opposite. If it's something I really want, I'm generally like out the door and go pick it up. There was one I just missed out on. Arvon did a collaboration with Mortalis, I think, and it was like part of one of their like Jurassic Haze kind of style beers. I forgot what it was called, but that was gone. I wasn't able to get that, but I didn't jump in that was like one I didn't jump in the car for.
They got a couple of their fruity beers coming, hopefully coming to the side of the state, though, because I don't know when, I didn't take the time to see when they would be delivering here, but they have Orange Push Pop coming back out. I'm like, okay, that sounds pretty tasty. And after dabbling with Smooge last week, I'm like, all right, now I want like ice cream in a fucking glass.
I think when I looked, when I saw that they were doing that collaboration, I was going to order it for delivery. If those of you who don't know, Arvon Brewing out in Grand Rapids, they do a delivery service basically almost, I think they do like at least half the state, if not more, the lower peninsula.
They advertise like the entire lower half, something like that. So you
Yeah.
might have to wait a week or two to get it, but they will take pretty much anything to your house.
Yeah, there was like a 2-week wait, and at that point I was like, it's probably going to hit shelves around here. I mean, they're kind of cagey about whether or not stuff's going to hit distro. They're like, if it doesn't sell out in the tap room, we'll put it in distribution. And generally, I think that they probably still have an allotment that they set aside for distribution, because it seems like most things, except for some of their stouts, usually come out like all over the state.
There's a handful of things that they will list as tap room only, that like those Halloween beers they did last year. Both of us had ordered those.
Yeah.
I never saw those hit this side of the state in distribution. Maybe you did, but I never caught them doing that.
No, that candy series was probably the one of the few that they've. Well, that, I would say, I think this year they're hitting more distro, whereas I think that was part of as part of Halloween stuff, and because I've seen like Dark Divinity, those stouts that they do in like the black cans. I've seen those on store shelves. I was able to pick some up from 8 Degrees Plato a couple months back.
So while we're on the topic of beer and other beers, since we're starting to stray, did you see that M4 has picked up Broad Leaf?
Yeah, I did see that. I saw that, about a week ago? Well, no, just a couple days ago. I think it was like Tuesday or something.
Yeah, they announced it on Monday or Tuesday, but it's already hit shelves today. Like I saw
Cool.
Off the Wagon and I think Holiday, and I think the one that you go to was a Livonia Liquor and Fine Wine, something like that.
Yeah, it might be Livonia Fine Wine and Liquor, but yeah, Livonia.
All the places that I usually go, they all had, it was all the same 2 cans, some guava, something or other sour, and a hazy IPA. But to start, and their sour series are pretty solid. They're, in my opinion, like, we have a new video up of it, the mandatory Michigan breweries, or whatever we're calling them, which I do think we need to add, or whatever we're calling them, to the end of the title.
It did change.
That's one that, whenever we get to that side of the state, that I would put Broadleaf high on that mandatory list, in my opinion.
I kind of feel like maybe that would be like a combo. Like that would be it'd be a Broadleaf and a Vivant thing, but maybe those could even be 2 separate because they're not really close.
They're not that far. You could do them both in a day. It's probably 15 minutes, 20 minutes drive from one to the other. And you could actually, if you do Vivant first, like Broadleaf is a little bit more east, so you can kind of hit that on the way back, I guess, if I'm remembering right. To be honest, as much as I like Vivant, and I do think that Vivant might be the most beautiful brewery in this state, I don't know that I feel that it's necessarily mandatory at this point. I feel like a lot of places have kind of surpassed them as far as what they do, where they really kind of have their niches. They do something different and unique in comparison to a lot of places where all the farmhouse, like there's other places that do the farmhouse stuff, and I would make an argument that I think that, like, Barrel and Beam, for example, does a ton of farmhouse stuff. And
that's pretty much what they do.
I think their farmhouse sales are better, but that's preference.
Yeah, I like their stuff. That would be, if we could ever get to Marquette, Barrel and Beam is definitely mandatory for that high up there. I mean, there's not a zillion different breweries up there, but I'd say Broadleaf. I'd say Barrel and Beam and Black Rocks are probably the 2, and Ordock. Yeah,
for sure. But it's cool to see Broadleaf expanding. They're one that I was always kind of surprised that it took them. I say it took them this long as if they didn't want it, but with having Vivant behind them, I thought they would have got over here a little bit quicker, just because you can find Vivant pretty much anywhere.
Yeah.
But whatever, we have them now, so that's good. Kind of tying around to that, we did ask on social media today if we had any questions that wanted to be answered, and someone actually answered
or asked,
or asked, yes. So we did have one question that got posed to us, and this seems like a good place to put in since we're talking about beer and beer kind of coming into our market. Our friends at North Center Brewing asked what the consumer's take is on price hikes and the cost of raw materials going up, meaning at what point does something become too expensive versus perceived value. So for the interest of this question, I'm going to keep it in the frame of beer. I don't want to start talking about everything.
What do you think about the increase in price against what it's gonna cost for porn?
You pay for porn?
No. What, do I look like a sucker?
In the words of Henry Rollins, there's 3 things in life that should never be paid for: drugs, sex, and office supplies.
True. Well,
porn certainly falls in the sex.
Yeah, I don't want to pay for office supplies, that's for sure. Yeah, I don't know. What do you think about that? What do you think is like the price that'll get too high where a 4-pack or a single, well, I guess single cans are tough. Let's just keep it to 4 and 6 packs. keep it in the craft beer realm. What do you think the price is that it'll get to where like people will stop buying things like craft beer because of the price? What do you think that price point is?
You think for the average person or for me?
I would say, well, the average like craft beer drinker.
I would think if you're averaging $20 a 4-pack for just like nothing special, not like a limited release or whatever, you're just talking like your single hop IPA or something that's around 6 to 7%. We'll just use as an example. I would think if you were paying $20 for a 4-pack of that, that would probably be kind of pushing it for the average person. Me personally, I have a hard time. So there's exceptions to this for sure. We can kind of get into that in a second, but I have a hard time justifying paying for, whether it's a 4-pack, a bomber, or whatever the case is. I have a hard time justifying paying for a beer when I can conceivably pay for a spirit for less or the same amount of money. Just because being someone who does like a handful of spirits, you kind of get more bang for your buck out of that. If you can find we'll use what I always use as an example. If I can find a $20 bottle of bourbon, as opposed to a $20 4-pack, that $20 bottle of bourbon is going to have a lot more return on investment for me.
That makes sense. I mean, I think sometimes when you go nowadays for me, sometimes when I see like a $25 bomber of just a beer on a shelf at a store, that kind of, I don't know, that kind of makes me back down a little bit. I think, when it was something like, I'm going to get a CBS, right? I'm going to order it from Founders. I'm going to go to Grand Rapids to pick it up. When it was that whole kind of, pageantry around it, like the whole process around it and driving out there. Okay, I paid $50 and all I got was this lousy 2 bombers of CBS. I'm putting that on a t-shirt, by the way. That, that pageantry around that $25 at that time was like, okay, well, it's a one-time thing, or once a year, or once whenever they release that beer kind of thing. And now you go to the store and every bomber you see, not everyone, but a lot of bombers that you see, and I have picked up a few, it's like a $25 bomber, and I'm like, I can't do that. Now that's me, and I know that some people, they're loyal to specific breweries, and I think that kind of comes into play. Some people are really loyal to certain places. I feel like when you start paying as much for a 4-pack as you can buy like 4 beers at a bar, that's when it's kind of like, I mean, bar prices would have to, beer tap prices would have to raise too.
That's a similar concept to what I'm saying about a spirit.
Yeah.
Like it's, value for money. And, when it comes to like the bombers and stuff like that, generally, like for me, I will say brand loyalty is a huge thing. Like I'll put it out there. Like I'm more willing to pay a premium for a drafting table, barrel aged, whatever, because I know what's going into it and all that, as opposed to going to, let's say, we'll pick up a brewery that I don't ever buy anything from, a $25 bomber from Atwater. Like, there's no way in hell I'm not considering anything from Atwater, but I'm especially not considering a $25 bomber from them. But I mean, I also look into things like, if you're going to we'll just use $25 as the price for admission for the sake of this. If you're going to put a $25 price tag on a bomber or a 16-ounce can or whatever it is that you're packaging with it, I want tons of detail as to why this can or bottle is going to be $25. I want to know what barrel it was in, how long it was in, what brand of spirit was in the barrel, where the barrel came from, is it a first use, second use, blah, 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 all that crap. Because, like, if you're taking just using bourbon barrels as an example, if you're saying you have a stout that sat in the Basil Hayden's barrel for 2 years or whatever, probably wouldn't sit that long, but just for the example. I'm not a big fan of Basil Hayden to begin with, so why am I going to go out of my way to pay more money for a beer that's sitting in a barrel that had something else in it that I don't like? Flip that, though, and you say, it's a $25 bomber for a beer that sat in a Evan Williams barrel. Evan Williams isn't a premium brand or anything like that. It's not like a Blanton's or whatever. But I like the spirit that's in there to begin with. So it's more likely to kind of impose its flavor note or character onto the beer. So I'm more likely to like, at least I know what I'm getting myself into at that point. Coincidentally, a bottle of Evan Williams is like $15, so maybe I could just buy that. But that's kind of where the problem is.
Yeah, I'm definitely thinking these days about, with inflation and kind of costs going up on everything, seemingly, it's got to be tough to be a brewer. I mean, you get to the point where you've probably bought a lot of stuff in advance up to a point, and it's going to start getting to the point where I'm running out of supplies. I have to re-up, and now it's cost me 50% more than it cost me previously. So I think about that a lot. I think about, for me, what would it have to get to for me not to do my YouTube channel anymore? Like how high does beer have to get before, because, between you, me, the wall, and everybody listening, so the other person that's listening, I don't make any money. I'm not like, YouTube isn't this, panacea, especially not for craft beer people. Like, unless you're talking about brewing beer and making videos, if you're just doing beer reviews, if you're going around your area and you're talking to people or making videos about breweries, I make like $150 off my YouTube channel with, I'm saying like straight up just the advertising. I got a W-2 that was
per episode.
No, for the year. I got a W-2 from Google for $150, and I had to claim that, so that was great. What point does it get to where I can't make these videos because the cost of the beer is so prohibitive? And there was a point where I was talking about price points, and I don't really talk about it now because I'm buying singles, and it's kind of hard to say like, oh yeah, I paid $4 whatever for a single, and blah blah blah. But I think when you get to the point where like a Two-Hearted, a 6-pack of Two-Hearted is going to cost you $15, or I don't know what it costs now. I think it's probably $10 or $12 maybe for a 6-pack of Two-Hearted. I'd say probably 12, right? That sounds reasonable.
I think I've seen it on sale for 10, but I think it's normally like 12 sounds about
yeah,
right.
I think when that starts to get like $15, $16, $17, something where the mass producers of beer, or I don't want to say macro, but when like a larger craft brewery starts to raise those prices, that's when it's going to be like, yeah, I think I'm just going to switch to, drinking toilet wine or something else that I can make on my own, making cider.
Well, there's always the other thing that will be interesting too. You mentioned Bell's as an example, and I should preface this because I don't want to make it sound like I'm talking shit about Bell's. I still have every reason to believe that Bell's is going to be a fantastic brewery for the foreseeable future. But, they just sold to New Belgium, so they're, a much, much larger brewery now than they were a year ago. What if, just based off the idea of like quantity over whatever else, like what if Bell's, instead of going the route of pricing up, starts pricing down? Instead of paying $12 for a 6-pack Two-Hearted, you're paying $9 for it, and they're selling 3 times more because of that. Kind of like how, you can get a 6-pack of Budweiser for what, $6-7, something like that?
I wouldn't be able to tell you.
It's in that ballpark.
Take your word for it.
You can get a 30-pack of PBR for $18.99. So, I'm assuming a 6-pack is probably like $1 a beer.
Yeah, I think that's probably pretty fair.
Math.
Right. $77 for a 6-pack. They cost $1 each, right?
Or like, the other one that we can talk about locally that's kind of in that boat is Founders. They're under the umbrella of a major corporation now. And I don't know if you've noticed this, but if you walk in Meijer and look in the beer aisle, like they pack solid gold right between Labatt Blue and Budweiser. So you're getting a different piece of real estate there than if you have it shoveled down in the corner where the light in the fridge doesn't work and you're kind of stuck between Old Nation and whatever else is there. Line and Kugel probably. So, I don't know. It's interesting. I think at the end of the day, there's always going to be someone who's so into it, for better or worse, that they'll keep paying the price. The question is that enough to keep the little guy's lights on where it is now?
Yeah, and I think for me, if it gets to the point where it's too cost prohibitive to buy a beer at the store, I'm just going to go straight to the brewery. If they can keep the lights on, like you said. I mean, that's my preferred way to drink anyway.
I try to do that.
Yeah,
I try to do that anyway, just because. That's actually, we mentioned M4 already. That's one of the things that I really like about them as a distributor. They will actually tell you, if you can, just go buy it at the brewery. We'd rather you give them the money than go through the 3-tier system and all that. So I think, if you can, by all means, go right to them. Don't even bother with all that. But, if you're like one of us or a lot of people, you want to try stuff that you can't always drive to, or you don't want to, there's reasons why you might want to buy it from a store.
Yeah, but ultimately, if it gets that bad where I can't buy, if I have to, if I go to the store and some Old Nation beer, like you mentioned Old Nation before, or if some beer from Founder, well, I don't know about Founders, but if, like City Built, which again, that's a super bad example because they don't really distribute out here anymore for some reason. Odd Side. Let's just say Odd Side. Okay. If I can't go get my Odd Side beer at the store, I'll make do with what's nearby. But I would much prefer, if I'm hankering for a Hazel's Nuts or a hipster brunch or something, I'm going to go to the store and buy it. But in the case that it would get too expensive, hopefully I'd still be able to go to my local place, one of the several local places and support them locally.
All right, I got an empty glass. You got an empty glass. So we're going to move on to the next beverage here. So this one is kind of the flagship. This has got to be the flagship for this company. It's definitely one of, if not the most well-known beer that
I've never heard of this one. What is it?
Zombie Dust, which is it's a cola.
Oh, I love cola.
Yeah. So Zombie Dust is a 6.5% American Pale Ale. That's probably using the term Pale Ale loosely because I've always thought this is more of a straight IPA than anything else. So their little description of this is an intensely hot, gushing, undead pale ale. It will only whatever. It's a pale ale.
You want me to read it? I'm well versed at this.
Go for it.
This intensely hopped and gushing undead pale ale will be owned. Oh, I'm sorry. I'll start over.
You're so versed.
I know, thank you. This intensely hopped and gushing undead pale ale will be one's only respite after the zombie apocalypse. Created with our marvelous friends in the comic industry. Art by Tim Seeley. This is 6.5% alcohol by volume.
I pulled out the oversized Glencairn for this as well.
I got my IPA glass because this is pretty close to an IPA.
Yeah, that's what I got. It's an oversized Glencairn.
That was one thing when I reviewed this. I went to, believe it or not, and I'm sure you do believe it, I went to Ohio to pick up Zombie Dust.
To hell you
I know, crazy. And there was a lot of discussion because I think on that video I mentioned like, hey, this is a pale ale, but I always think of it as an IPA. And there was some discussion. Yeah. I don't remember what all that discussion was about, but there's a reason why people think it's kind of like a progenitor to some kind of IPA dealios. It's not quite as intense as an IPA, but I think pale ales are so close to IPAs sometimes that it's hard to differentiate them at times. I talk about, Sierra Nevada being one of the first beers that I kind of wet my whistle in craft beer with, and I think of that as an IPA. I mean, it's a pale ale, it's Sierra Nevada pale ale, but it tastes like a straight up IPA.
And that's what I get with this. This beer, to be honest, so for me, this is a really good beer. This is, even for me, a guy who's not big on IPAs, this is a beer that I could pour and be content with probably 9 times out of 10 without too much of an issue. I don't have a date on my can.
Mine was packaged on February 21st, 2022.
Yeah, I got nothing. They skipped mine. So
it was on the other one.
Mine's undead. Yeah. This beer, on the nose, I just get a nice fresh hoppiness. It's got some little bit of earthiness to it. Nothing too over the top. Surprisingly, for the reputation this beer has, I always expected this to be something that's going to kind of punch you in the mouth and throw you around the room a little bit, and it really doesn't. As far as this type of pale ale goes, I mean, it's approachable. It's like a crisp, brain-seeking hug. It just kind of wants to hang out with you. It doesn't blow your palate out. It's not dank to the point where you're gonna be tasting it for the next 6 hours. It's got its reputation might be a little bit over the top, but it's well earned as far as being one of the more respected pale ales on the market. Yeah,
I think it's got a really nice kind of back and forth flavor. You get a lot of that sweetness, you get that orangey, that citrusy, that kind of, there's a bit of almost like a bubblegummy kind of sweet, sugary flavor to it. But then on the finish, you get that bitterness, you get that citrus bitterness, but it's not like you said, it's not a blow your mouth out kind of bitterness. It's bitter, but it's not overly bitter. I'm looking through the comments on this video, and so I've got a couple people saying that, pale ales as opposed to IPAs they're hop forward like IPAs, but they're not as dank like you just mentioned. This guy says Three Floyds stays true to the style, so Zombie Dust is a true pale and not an IPA. I mean, that's a guy's opinion, but yeah, I mean, it's not as offensive as like an IPA. It's not so strong. It's not so forward. It's just kind of got a nice kind of subtle, smooth flavor all the way throughout.
Yeah, it's And again, I remember this beer being a beer that people would leave the state, drive to Indiana, and come back with like a trunk full of this shit. I can't tell you how many times I've seen the black and I guess cardboard brown cases of zombie dust sitting in like a friend's house just because they made a trip, so they had to stock up and got like 3 or 4 cases of it just to haul back.
Yeah.
For me, that was the first time I had one of these from someone who ordered it like that, and it's always kind of lived up to the expectation in that sense. I will say, as far as like labels go, I do think when they had this in the bottle, and I don't know if they still sell it in bottles or not, the bottle looked better than the can does.
They do sell it in bottles. When I picked this up, they had a bottle. They had like 2 bottles just alone.
Do they?
Yeah, the bottle graphic or the label is so much better because it's that iridescent, like metallic kind of coat to it.
And you get the whole bottle. I don't know. Kind of looks like what's that dude on the zombie like ice dude on Game of Thrones? Kind of looks like him.
Yeah, the whatever his name is.
The king.
Yeah,
the
king of the not king of the north, but Ice King. No, I don't know. It's been a while.
Whatever. Yeah, that dude. He kind of looks like him, but less frozen.
Not as blue. I was gonna say you mentioned that being like I don't know if you called it a whale or a chase or whatever you called this that it used to be. I've been kind of saying this. It's been my mantra about whales and chase beers and stuff like that lately, and you've heard it before, but I'll just say it for the audience. Like there are so many of these chase beers, these whale beers, these like beers that you have to have, these must-try beers. And we're the thing is, when you finally get your hands on your own and you try it, 9 times out of 10, there are a few that have lived up to expectations, but 9 times out of 10, they're kind of underwhelming. And I feel the reason for that is, all these people that have tried to get these different beers, you try to get it, I try to get it, Johnny down the street tries to get it, the brewer tries to get that, the brewers try to get that, and they taste that. And they want to do their own thing. They want to do something where they can get it to the point where it's very similar to that style. I'm going to edit that. Mm-hmm. I'll probably leave your burp in, but
you should leave it.
But
you left yours in last.
By the time that we get to try the beer, the chase or the whale beer, it's kind of like you've had something like that because that's what everybody is trying to emulate. Up to a point.
Right.
So it's really tough, especially beers that got to prominence within the last 5-6 years. Things have gone a decade ago. Things like brewing technology, the way that beer has evolved and changed, the styles that are popular now have blown up within the last couple of years. Like they've just been able to make things that are insane. We talk about Smooge, you talked about the Arvon beer that was a fruity kind of beer like ice cream in a glass. It's like
Push Pop.
Yeah, Push Pop. So all these beers are becoming really things are changing so rapidly in the world of beer. It's surprising, but it's also kind of like paralysis by analysis sometimes where you're like, I want to try a beer. What beer do I want to try? There are 50 different craft breweries on this shelf. Which one am I going to try today?
Well, I'm sure a big part of it too. There's probably a handful of things, but one, people travel for beer so much more than what they used to. And especially with the way that beer has exploded, and just like any other liquor, there is a secondary market for beer and people trade it and all kinds of stuff like that. So your whale beers that, have a quote unquote high price tag or high, value as far as that is concerned, they get passed around a lot more now than what they did. And, it's a lot easier now to find someone willing to go ship you a, box of vegetable oil or whatever.
Pickles.
Quote.
Pickled onions.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Hot sauce.
There you go.
Whatever they're going to ship you. And, all you have to do is, and you're like, yeah, I'll trade you this for this, whatever. I know for years, I was trading Night Fury beers just because I had them, no problem getting them. And you weren't in South Lyon or near South Lyon, you weren't getting them. So I use, for what did they give you, 20 beers out of the bundle when you have their Mug Club membership, something like that? Some huge.
For the Fury for a Feast, it's 10. Now it's 10. I mean, you got to buy them, but you get access to 10.
Yeah. Whatever it was, so if it was 10, I keep 5 of them for myself, and then I flip 5 of them for whatever else I wanted to trade it for. I never got money for them. I was always just 1-for-1 type trades. So there's that. The other thing that is, I'm sure, a real thing right now, although no one in the industry would probably ever admit this, is there are clone recipes. You could right now, I'm sure, just Google, zombie dust recipe. and find a pretty damn close like recipe to be able to make your own zombie dust at home. What's to stop a brewer from taking that, mass producing it, and call it
undead dust,
cat dust, whatever? Yeah,
undead dandruff.
So I'm sure that's undead dandruff.
I just gave somebody an idea. Let's copyright that.
Horrible.
Undeaddandruff.com. It can be our fake beer.
I like it. So, but I mean, I'm sure that happens all the time. Like, how many times have you had a beer and said, this kind of tastes like Two Hearted?
Yeah, I mean, there's, like you said, I didn't even think of that. But yeah, there's like zillions of clone recipes out there for Two Hearted, for Hop Slam, for probably any Pliny the Elder, any, like major beer that you could think of. I'm sure there's a clone recipe available out there. But yeah, that makes total sense. Mm-hmm. I mean, what Brewsmith and like, we'd have to have a brewer weigh in on this, but Brewsmith and brewing applications that store recipes and stuff, I'm sure they have stuff like that built into it,
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And then the third thing I would say that probably happens, and you hear about this in music a lot, like where, this is what Vanilla Ice claimed when he got sued by whoever, Queen. They claim that a lot of people just have a similar like concept and kind of bring it together and ends up sounding really similar. Mm-hmm. I don't know that that's always true with music, but there's a lot of times where you could conceivably hear a similar riff or rhythm or chorus line or whatever. And if you take, it's almost like the way you hear like Pro Tools like strip shit down, it sounds identical at some core part of the song. People sue the shit out of each other over this. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if, and again, I'm going to just way oversimplify this, if, some brewer in, we'll say, Kentucky is like, all right, I'm going to add 4 pounds of barley, 10 gallons of water, bunch of hops, and poof, I've got this wonderful IPA. Hey, this tastes a lot like Two Hearted or whatever. Like I said, way oversimplifying, but.
And that brewer's name is Jimmy Crackhorn, and he don't care. So let me ask you, you brought it up. You brought up trading and stuff, so obviously you've traded beer before. Have you ever bought any beer on secondary markets, like on whatever that website is that people buy and sell empty bottles?
I've used Beck's before. You talking about Beck's, or are you talking about a different one?
I don't know anything about it. So there's like beer collectibles or some shit like that where they supposedly sell empty bottles or beer bottle, the labels on beer bottles or whatever, but they're actually you can buy beer on secondary beer on there.
That's the thing on eBay. Well, it is a thing on eBay for bourbon. I don't know if it's a thing for beer, but I would assume it's the same concept.
I think eBay used to do beer. I don't think they allow you to sell any kind of like.
They can't because it's more about the shipping laws and what goes to what state than anything else with it. I know, like I know of a few sites that do it. The only site that I ever used was Beck's, which I think just shut down this year. Beck's was basically like a message board where it was about you weren't supposed to exchange money for beer. I'm sure people did, but you weren't supposed to. Essentially, it was supposed to, you'd put up in search of, and I'm just going to say random things, in search of Mallow and Train Hopper and PBR. And, you then put what you have available that you want to trade. So you have, Expedition and Miller Lite and...
All these names you're throwing out sound
Zombies.
Really similar to beers that I've drank before. Is that a coincidence?
Yeah. No. So, you basically put up a shopping list of what you have that you can trade and what you're looking for. And someone would message you and be like, hey, blah, 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 I can trade this. And you just work out a little deal like that. And that's all you did. You would trade bottle for, at least all I did was bottle for bottle. That's how I got a bottle of No Rules before it became like available in stores for like 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
And then went back to the tap room. Trying to think what other things I got like that.
So you've traded them, but you've never like outright purchased.
No, I've traded. I never wanted to, for whatever reason, when I got money involved with it, I felt like I don't want to say I was doing something wrong. I felt like I was wasting money then. Like I had a different level of like desperation. Mm-hmm. But when I was trading, I didn't feel that way. I don't know if that makes sense. Or
it does. No, that makes sense.
Head.
I mean, you kind of feel like you're giving something to get something rather than you're just giving something. Mm-hmm. I mean, you're still getting something, but monetarily, like, whatever.
Again, that's probably a dumb like line to have on it, but for whatever reason, that's how it was in my head. I did get a bottle of Dark Lord that way. Wasn't really that impressive to me, but someone likes it. So. And
to mention, Dark Lord is a Three Floyds beer.
Yeah, and I got just the, I think it was the regular barrel aged version. I didn't get one of the like crazy, because they're kind of like any like company that has a like core stout that's in a barrel, and then they do like 25 fucking variants of it a year just because. Same concept. It's just their version of it. Yeah, I mean, I liked it. I just didn't think it was anything great, but that's fine. So it had a lot. And again, this is a preference thing. I got a ton of black licorice off of it, and that's not my favorite profile. You dig black IPAs, right?
I do. Yeah.
Yeah, so you probably would like it because for me, like whenever I have a black IPA, that's kind of the flavor that I always catch on the forefront of it.
I can see that.
Or generally. And I'm not really into that one.
Yeah, I wouldn't associate black licorice with black IPAs without you saying that, but now that you say it, I definitely can pick that up. Kind of like a clovey, kind of anise.
See, I like clove. I do like cloves, but I don't know. Maybe I haven't had one in a while, so maybe I'm just overdue to try one again.
The only time I ever got the opportunity to try a Dark Lord was Josh up at Ascension texted me, and he's like, "Hey, what are you up to? We're opening a bottle. I brought a bottle of Dark Lord, or somebody was opening a bottle. Come on up if you want to try it." And I was like, it was one of those times where I'd probably been up there too many times recently, and I'm pretty sure I didn't even ask my wife if she was cool if I left. I'm sure it would have been like, "What the hell is wrong with you?" No, kind of, So I'm smart. I know when to pick up cues, so I was like, thanks, man. Maybe next time. And then it never happened again.
You could have just said you were going to Target.
Yeah, except Ascension's like 30 minutes from me, and I would be there for several. You know me, I'd be there for hours. I'm just gonna have one, and that turns into I'm gonna have another one. That turns into I'm gonna have 4 more.
Well, especially when they're opening stuff up like that. I've been in there those days too. You're gonna be there a minute. So, what's your opinion on Lou Ferrigno?
Lou Ferrigno, the Hulk.
The Hulk.
I go back and forth on Lou Ferrigno. Sometimes I feel like he's a massive dick, and sometimes I think like he seems like a pretty okay guy.
So what would you think if I told you he's going to play a murderous cannibalistic pig farmer?
I could see it.
Well, he's going to play a murderous cannibalistic pig farmer in a movie called The Hermit.
Okay. Scans?
So this just got announced. Like, I can't find anything other than, like, there's like 4 or 5 articles all confirming.
That's quite the segue, by the way.
Literally, that's what I was going for.
Master the
like
segue.
Zombie dust. Well, I want to say I'm going out of order. I figured I'd pair one with the last beer that we have because of the title, but I figured might as well talk about some of these things since I took a few minutes to jot down some shit that's going on. I always really like Lou Ferrigno best in I Love You Man, just because I like watching him beat up Jason Segel. That's pretty.
I forgot he was in that
for a few minutes, off and on. So. And I would consider a house with a giant Lou Ferrigno statue a selling point. Maybe that's just me. But hearing that he's going to play a murderous, cannibalistic pig farmer, I always thought the point of having a pig farm is so you didn't have to eat the bodies.
Yeah, it's funny. I just saw one of those, going on websites and you see those like spammy kind of like, click on this link to see Lou Ferrigno as this. Maybe it was a YouTube video. This is kind of spammy too. About Lou Ferrigno. Sometimes. So I was like, I don't know. I was going to ask how old he is. I think he's got to be around 70, right?
Yeah, I would think. If not, he's got to be in his 60s, if not 70s.
Now it's time to look at the Google machine. How old is Lou Ferrigno?
What was the Hulk on? That was the 60s. No. Oh, yeah, I'm way off. Yeah. So I never really watched that show. The only thing I really remember from that show is him throwing a bear off a cliff in one episode. And that's only because I have a GIF of it on a computer that is currently not functional. So.
Louis Jude Ferrigno is currently 70 years young. He will be 71 on November 9th.
When he will cannibalize his first victim.
Well, how do you know that's his first victim? We don't know what he does in his private time. He could be a cannibal right now.
I hadn't heard anything about that.
Well, who would he tell? Why would somebody tell you?
A horrible joke that I just threw there. So you got a good spin going on that. So
that's why we have to do the live show so people can see our beer swirling skills.
Mine's a little bit less than there. Just getting ahead now.
Yeah, mine's gone.
Ugh. That finish is bitter, man.
You ever watch Tim and Eric?
Awesome show? Not really.
You ever Check It Out with Dr. Steve Brule?
No. I don't even know what that one is.
Well, you know who Dr. Steve Brule is, right?
No.
He's I don't know what his actual title is. He was so Tim and Eric, when they would do the married newscaster couple, and Steve Brule would come in and he would tell something, and Steve Brule is John C. Reilly. You You did
Okay.
when you said it's bitter. It sounded just like him.
That's the biggest compliment I've ever had in my life, if I sound like John C. Reilly. So,
Did you start watching Winning Time yet?
no. I haven't had time to watch much of anything this week. Well, I did. So I didn't really want to get invested in anything, so I was thumbing through something, and I found a show called Most Expensivest, featuring the rapper 2
I was going to
Chainz.
say, that's on Vice, right?
I found it on Tubi.
Yeah, I think it was a Vice show at one point, or maybe it still is.
It's not good at all. Like, it's literally him going somewhere with a lot of expensive stuff. He goes, treat yourself. And then they...
Is that why I've been
Give
seeing a
them
lot of treat
expensive
yourself
shit.
on Twitter?
Not from me. I got like 2.5 episodes in. I'm like, all right, that's enough of this. No, I haven't had time to really sit down and watch much of anything this week.
I feel like John C. Reilly's portrayal of Dr. Jerry Buss is it's like an offshoot, or it's some kind of like extension of Dr. Steve Brule.
All right. So how does he compare to Dewey Cox?
I'm gonna tell you something here. I'm not proud of it. I have not seen that movie.
We're gonna have to fix that, because that is an amazing
I've
film.
heard a lot about it, and I've actually thought about sitting down and watching it several times. I just haven't.
So what that means for the one listener out there is that we're going to have a Dewey Cox episode at some point in the not too distant
Yeah, you're going to
future.
force me to watch it.
So, force you to watch worse things.
All right, so we're moving. It sounds like, from the sounds of things, from you cracking your bottle over there, we're on to our third and possibly final beer of the evening.
I got one more I can sub in if I need to, but yes. So this beer is called Hair Bear, and I'm going to be honest, this is another one I bought solely because of the label. This is an acid trip label if I've ever seen one.
Yeah, it's got Casper on here, as my daughter would call him, Chasper. It's got Casper. It looks like a Care Bear. They're all in different. They're all different sorts of disarray and drippiness. It's a cool label. This is a bottle, so we both got bottles, and this is where we can really see the reflective foil kind of labeling that they do, that they're really good at. I mean,
Did you ever watch the Ghostbusters cartoon as a kid?
the real Ghostbusters or Ghostbusters?
The real
Yes.
Ghostbusters. The cartoon.
Yes.
The dude with the red face on the end of this label, he's kind of reminding me of the Boogie Monster from that cartoon.
Oh, it's been so long.
I don't know if you remember.
It's been so long. I'd have to see it.
That cartoon actually had some freaky shit in it for a kid.
So let's talk about this.
Ooh.
This is Pear Bear. It is a American Wild Ale brewed with pears. And this label, like you said, is super trippy. It is Casper, like we said, some other Care Bears, and Casper's not a Care Bear, but other dismembered stuffed animal type people. And that's really all it is. I know that yours is probably going to say the same thing. Mine just has etched on the bottle, bottled 2022.
Yep. So the other things I can tell you with this is a American Wild Ale that has been aged in, it was aged in wine and bourbon barrels for 11 months, and it comes in at a not too whopping 8%.
Did you smell it?
True to that wild ale. Yeah, it's funky.
Oh, yeah.
You can, so if you haven't really jumped into wild ales very much, I think they're very much so an acquired taste. I don't think they're for everyone. Yeah. They are very yeasty and very funky.
And acidic. They can be very acidic.
Yeah, and this is probably going to be more on that.
Yeah, you can smell it. So, I do smell that kind of wine aroma to it. It's got that kind of wine funkiness to it, that almost like a...
I don't drink much wine.
I don't drink much wine
at all. This kind of, to me, though, has a nose like... so I don't know what they're called, but those like pink shitty wines my sister drinks.
Like a rosé?
They're really shit. No, they're shittier than that. Like in a box. I think it's a Zinfandel or something like that.
Oh, White Zinfandel? Okay. I don't drink enough to
it's
know.
Pink,
I've heard the name. That's about as far as it goes.
Yeah, usually when I buy wine, it's based off what label looks cool on the bottle. Because I was told to buy wine.
Ménage à trois. I love that wine.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so did you try... Oh, you're trying it now. I can see from your face.
Whoa. A little bit of pucker on that.
It.
It finishes real nice, though.
Wow.
Okay, you got it, too.
Yeah. No, it has a good taste to it, but it is super sour, like puckery at the start.
Oh, yeah.
But the finish is nice. It's not quite as acidic as I thought it would be. I thought it would be like, When I don't know for you, when I start to get a sore throat, if I drink like lemonade or something that's got a lot of acid to it, you can feel it in the back of your throat. This is like it's pretty smooth. It's not the aftertaste isn't as harsh as I was thinking it would be.
I'm getting a lot of lemon chasing it, like maybe 20 seconds after or so. What I'm getting flavor wise off of this is like after you get past that sour and the pucker, I'm getting like a apple Jolly Rancher type taste.
I could see that.
Or like a candy apple.
Yeah.
Not like not a natural apple, like a
artificial
green piece of candy apple. Yeah. That start is intense.
Yeah, it is.
So what do you pair with a pear bear?
Another pear bear?
Cocaine bear.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize you were setting me up, but okay.
Well, this is why we saved this for last. So, well, I got a couple other things we could talk about too, but so this is another one that this movie, if nothing else, we will keep this podcast going long enough to do a episode about this movie called Cocaine Bear. This movie stars Kerry Russell and Ray Liotta, and it's telling the story of a drug runner whose plane crashes with a load of cocaine and is found by a black bear who eats it.
So far, so
That's
good.
Really, all this. I don't see how this can fail.
I'm surprised. You said Kerry Russell and who else? Rucker Hauer?
Ray Liotta.
I was joking. But yeah, Kerry Russell's been in some pretty decent stuff.
So is Ray Liotta, but Ray Liotta is not above taking the
paycheck.
bad movie.
Right. I just think Kerry Russell and the Americans, doing great work on the Americans.
I can't think of Ray Liotta without thinking of Goodfellas because it's one of my all-around favorites. But then I also think of Ray Liotta in Narc or Ray Liotta in, he's in a lot of
What was that Prisoner movie he was in where he's like it was like after Goodfellas where his star was on the rise and what was it called? Fortress? Was he in Fortress?
I don't think I saw that one.
That's like a notoriously horrible movie.
Let's switch off of the Google machine, go to the IMDb machine.
Yes, Pear Bear is kind of growing on me. I feel like you kind of get that first shock of the first taste is that real puckery sour, but after that, you kind of get used to it. It's not, it's still sour, but it's not quite as sour.
I feel like that in general with sours, especially with wild ales, they always start really, really intense. But once you kind of adjust to it, they kind of, they're a lot like a spirit in the sense that they almost change in the glass. I wouldn't be surprised if, like, from a technical stance, if they aerate a little bit and kind of open up like a wine or a spirit would. But they definitely get better as you kind of get through them. So, yeah, it's not too bad. All right, Ray Liotta. He's in Hubie Halloween. I don't remember him being in that. That movie was terrible.
I love myself too much to put myself through that, and that's not saying a lot. Let's get that in the open.
I think I was drunk and lazy when I put that on and just didn't want to get up to turn it off.
You had watched something else, and that was like the autoplay next thing.
Yeah. Which lately it's been the John Gacy tapes. It's like I watched
John Gacy.
Yeah, I know.
Monday Night Football.
I watched Happy Gilmore like a week ago. Just kind of again didn't really want to think. Just put something on, and I think Shooter McGavin might be the best like
heel
villain.
Yeah,
he's so good in that movie. But it starts rolling the credits, and I'm like still kind of in that like, I don't really want to think too much. I don't really want anything serious, and it starts like counting down, like coming up next, the John Wayne Gacy tapes. I'm like, no,
I'm in such a great mood. Let's watch these John Wayne Gacy tapes. Right.
I will probably watch that at some point because I do find like all those documentaries to be weirdly fascinating.
Yeah.
In a morbid way. Not to the point where I want to see them on beer labels. I don't know if you saw that or not.
I did. But they had that. Yeah, they had like a killer 4-pack or something, right? And it was like Dahmer and Gacy and I don't know who else, Ramirez, and probably somebody else.
And gonna bug me.
Otis Toole.
Who was the fourth one? It's gonna piss me off now. I put it the other day. Yeah, it's not quite like that. Like I think that's kind of crossing the line because at some point you're trying to capitalize off this horrible thing. I guess you can make the argument that's what Netflix is doing too, or whoever makes these documentaries. But I feel like when you're looking at a documentary or something along those lines, you at least have the opportunity to learn something with it. Where if you're just drinking a Jeffrey Dahmer Pilsner or whatever, which I hate that I just said that, what are you really doing at that point, you know?
We got the so
Oh, they took it down.
I really like Bud Light. What should I have here? Well, we have the Jeffrey Dahmer Pilsner, or we have the Undead Dandruff. Which one do you think that you'd prefer?
Right. They took it down. I'm looking at the post right now. I shared it from the original brewery, and it's just coming up that it's not available now. So
yeah, I think they got a lot of flack for it. I've seen it on a couple like not necessarily national. It wasn't like on the NBC national news or anything, but some larger online publications.
I was wondering if it would have got there, because that's the kind of like thing that, you know, the way cancel culture is right now, and in general, I don't agree with the idea of that to begin with. But the way that shit runs rampant now, I wouldn't be shocked at all if you put on the Today Show and watch Savannah be like, oh, and in the news today, Jeffrey Dahmer's back and he's in beer form.
Jeffrey Dahmer's back.
Right. Shit, this is going to bug me. I wonder who the other one was. Maybe Google will have it after all. No, that was who I was going to sit down straight. It's Ed Kemper was the other one.
Oh, well, you know, if it wasn't for Mindhunters, I probably wouldn't even know who Ed Kemper was.
I did, but again, that's kind of... Again, I fully admit that when it comes to watching like documentary, I even listen to a few podcasts that focus on stuff like that, just because long form and like... Again, as horrible as it is, and I'm not trying to say like that this is the thing that I would prefer to be in society, no. But there is like a weird fascination as to what pushes people to that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, so, why somebody turns out that way. I mean, I'm sure, you know, I'm sure it's not always the parents' fault. Sometimes it is, but
seems like it's like 95% of the time it is.
Okay,
but,
well, geez.
Sorry. So,
as a parent, I'm hoping I can get away with a few things.
You know what goes good with serial killers?
A movie.
Marvel TV series on Disney+.
The Segway King, John Farner, back at it again.
So they're developing a new Daredevil series, and I don't really like Marvel in general lately, but I really liked the Daredevil series when it was on Netflix. Did you watch that?
I watched some of the first season. I think I watched all the first season, and I thought it was spoilers. I thought it was really cool when he showed up in Spider-Man.
So I didn't see that yet, but I assume that's still on Netflix. I mean, I think they own that, so it should still be on there.
I don't know. That might be on Disney+.
Well, whichever it's on, or wherever you have to get it, I would strongly recommend the way that you recommended Peacemaker, watching season 2 and 3 of that. Especially season 3. It's kind of one of those shows where it ended and you're like, why the fuck is this the end? Like, I want so much more of this.
Yeah. Well, I think that was like a Disney thing, right? They wanted the control back of the character.
That's part of it, and if you haven't noticed, Netflix is really bad at going past 3 seasons for the majority of their properties, too. So
yeah, well, especially now.
Right. But they're bringing it back with Charlie Cox in it, too, who was the same guy that played him in the Netflix series. I kind of have mixed feelings about it, because, like I said, I really loved that. Like, the Marvel part doesn't even really matter to me that it's a Marvel series. It's just the story they told and the way they told it. And to be honest, the way they, I never liked the Punisher show. Like that character to me in general is a little just fucking like overkill. It's probably the best way most accurate way to explain that character. But the
pun
way
intended.
Pun, overkill. He's used really, really well in that series. And even better than how he's used is how D'Onofrio's version of Kingpin is.
Kingpin? Yep.
Fantastic. So, yeah, that one I would say go back and watch that, like, recently soon.
Post-haste. Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
I don't know. I kind of hope that they kind of pick up where they left off with the series from Netflix, but I got a feeling they're going to try to put it into the Disney, ecosystem and make it fit Doctor Strange and fucking Captain America and all that shit. So
different a change of gears. Do you have Disney Plus?
Oh yeah. I have it because my wife loves all the old stuff, like the old classic animation stuff.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it's kind of turned into a glorified Simpsons app.
Yeah, because they bought that from Fox, right? So they have all the rights to that. So before I came down here to record this, I didn't get to finish it, obviously, but everybody in the house was watching the new Chip and Dale movie. It just premiered, I think, today.
There's a new one?
And I was like, yeah, so it's kind of about Chippendale. It's a Rescue Rangers movie, but Chippendale Rescue Rangers from the 90s become, one of them gets I forget, I didn't get to see all of it, so pardon my errors in
Chippendale goes to Chippendales.
Well, it's funny you bring that up. So Dale gets like CGI surgery or something to turn him from a animation to a CGI character. And there's a scene where he's in they don't really say it. They don't say it explicitly, but he's in a strip club, a male stripper, male strip club. He's in the backstage. I only got to see about maybe half an hour of it, but it is full of so much fan service. There's characters, they'll show like scenes where there's still 2D animation. They mix live action, 2D animation, CGI, claymation, and again, live action, as I said. And there's a scene where they have like, who was it? It wasn't Peter Griffin. Somebody from Family Guy was in it. There was like the old Sonic from Sonic the Hedgehog when they changed it from the old like ugly Sonic to the new Sonic. Do you remember that? Or do you know anything about that?
In the game or in the movie?
The movie.
I know.
They put out
I know what
ago.
he looks like. I haven't seen the movies though. I heard the movies are actually entertaining.
Sonic, when they put Sonic out, and I was telling my kids about this because they didn't remember because they were too young, but when they were originally showing the trailer for the Sonic the Hedgehog movie, the Jim Carrey and what's his face, the other guy,
Danny DeVito.
No.
It's gonna be Danny DeVito.
The guy who plays Cyclops.
Danny DeVito.
Come on. Regardless, they showed Sonic, and he was just this horribly ugly CGI character, and there was so much uproar that the studio and Sega pushed the movie back like 9 months so they could redo the model for Sonic and make him look more like the game character. But they have the old ugly model in the movie, and they're talking to him. They're like at a Comic-Con, and people are there to get pictures with ugly Sonic. And he's like the old model. But I think one of the voices I think Chip is voiced by Andy Samberg, and I think that Dale is voiced by Ben Schwartz, who was the voice of Sonic the Hedgehog. So I just thought it was kind of entertaining that
you should look at that picture I just sent you.
Ouroboros themselves. Yeah, oh no, I don't like that. I don't like that. I don't like that one bit.
So, since this is a audio medium for the time being, at least that is a picture of Danny DeVito as Sonic the Hedgehog. And he does not like it.
I don't like it. I had popcorn for dinner, so this third beer is starting to hit me.
Popcorn's absorbent. It should work.
I know, you'd think so.
Still super... I mean, Pear Bear is the right title for this beer, for sure. So
yeah, it's hard because I didn't really pick up the pear until maybe a few minutes ago. Like, it starts to really... Because you're getting more of that... You're not getting the acidity, but I was getting more of like you were saying, that kind of apple flavor to it, and now it's like pear is really coming through on the finish, basically.
Did you ever get those? They have them at Thai restaurants and sometimes Chinese restaurants. Those little green candies, they're like little hard candies that are usually next to the dinner mitts that they give out. It's like okay. Well, this just went off the rails then, so that comparison's not going to work. But they kind of taste like that. So,
apt comparison.
Right. Well, if you're starting to feel the Pear Bear, then I've got one other thing I was going to cover this week, just to kind of bring it up. So, I didn't even know this movie was being made, but apparently they've already given the Toxic Avenger a R rating for gore and graphic nudity. We chatted a little bit about this, but... what are your thoughts on Toxie?
Well, I was going to say, I thought we just kind of said that they announced it, or they were talking about doing it, and they announced the cast list, so they must be pretty far in production.
Did we talk about this on an episode already, or did we talk about this separately? I thought we talked about this
on an episode. Well, regardless. What do I think about Toxie?
Yeah.
The first time I saw Toxic Avenger, the first one, it's a trauma film, so it was traumatizing at the time. But I think with the cartoon, with all the kind of homogenization, the family, whatever, famification of Toxie, I think at this point I kind of feel like I'm kind of indifferent. I feel like it's kind of, it could go either way. I'm kind of surprised to hear that it's got a gore sexuality kind of rating to it, but I'm not surprised.
I'm not surprised by that. I'm surprised that it stars Kevin Bacon, Elijah Wood, and Peter Dinklage.
Yeah. I thought we did talk. We had to have said something about this.
I thought we talked about it offline, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I'm wrong all the time. So
It's about time you recognize that. I appreciate it.
Oh, I fully admit it constantly. That's part of being married, is you admit when you're wrong. Otherwise, you won't stay married.
That's true. I know. Yeah, I know about that all too well.
Yeah. All right. Well, closing thoughts on Three Floyds?
I just think it's been a good addition to the Michigan kind of beer scene. You know, we waited for it for so long. It's nice to see that they were able to bring most of their different beers to the state. I would love to see Dark Lord. I don't think we're ever going to see that. I think they're still kind of reserving that for festivals. I know they didn't have a fest for the last couple of years, and you could buy it online, which was a change of pace. And I have to say, I'm a big proponent of being able to buy your beer online and go pick it up or have it delivered and whatnot. Would I like to see Dark Lord at my doorstep and just be able to buy it and show up? Never having it, I'd like to have a bottle of it, but maybe that's for next time. Maybe a road trip is in order for that.
Dewey Pod road trip. We could do that. So
yeah, why not?
I've heard of worse reasons to drive to Indiana.
I mean, it is Indiana, so
they got lower tax on cigarettes, which is good for both of us non-smokers. So I don't know. I've always kind of part of me has always thought with Three Floyds, they're a little overhyped, but at the end of the day, they make really solid beer, and they're one of those breweries that falls more on. If this is your wheelhouse, they're going to be a home run every time out the gate. For me, half their beers are kind of outside of something that I want in the first place. But I will give them credit that they are more often than not kind of on their own wavelength, doing their own thing. And that's kind of more than you can say about most places lately. So they're definitely worth checking out. They're not a local place, so I'm not, if you're in Michigan, I'm not going to say you have to rush out and go drive out there tomorrow. You should, but you don't have to. Pick them up at your bottle shop, though. Your local bottle shops are just as important as your local brewery in a lot of ways. They're worth checking out. Go find something new, mix a 6-pack up and throw them in there. Especially if you like IPAs and hoppy stuff, you're not going to be disappointed.
I do put a lot of credit. I do hang a lot of credit on breweries that can do several different things. There are several places that just do, they do IPAs and they do IPAs well, and that's pretty much what they do. And that's really all they do. If you go to their tap room, they might have one other kind of beer, a couple, spots here and there where they do a stout, or they might do a porter, whatever, a pilsner, whatnot. But Three Floyds is a brewery that does. Rightly so. You said they do a lot of hoppy stuff, but they also, we tried a pretty solid sour here. Yeah. They do a couple good darker beers around Christmas time. They do Alpha Claws, so they do show their diversity. But I feel like a lot of people do think of them as being more of an IPA or a pale ale place, and especially probably because Alpha King and Zombie Dust are so popular.
Well, and I should say too, when we decided to do Three Floyds, and this time I picked up beer before you did. By a day, I had an effort to make sure that I was not only buying 3 IPAs. I tried to buy 3 things. I grabbed Zombie Dust because it seemed like the most obvious thing to grab. But past that, I was like, all right, whatever else I get, I don't want it to be an IPA because I want to talk about things other than just that, especially for these guys. But that's, again, I fully recognize and realize that I am in the minority when it comes to how I feel about IPAs, and that I'm fine with that. I've grown to accept that. Most people who are really into that, these guys are going to probably be something that you fall in love with and instantly, want to find everything you can of theirs.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think, a place that can do a lot of different divergent things is good. And, I think, we saw it. We got a Pilsner, which was top notch. I think it was a surprise to both of us. We weren't expecting it to be quite like that. I think we were both expecting it probably be a little bit more on the hoppy end of it, maybe more of a
expected more
pale lager or something.
I expected more bitter and less sweet.
Yeah, and it was a total surprise that it was how it was. Them Zombie Dust is probably the known commodity between the two of us.
Sure.
Had enough of it. I mean, I'm not. I like IPA. I like everything. So. But IPAs, you get kind of burnt out on it
peanut
over
butter
time.
IPA.
And then peanut butter IPA?
Peanut butter.
I'm down.
Bullshit.
Let's try it. I try it. I mean, I try everything. I don't, I don't hate anything.
You try it, then be pissed
beer-wise.
off later.
Yeah, maybe. Then, I mean, that's human nature. But then we tried their, like we said, we tried their sour and it was pretty good. I mean, it was different than what we expected it to be. And like their motto, like Three Floyds motto is, it's not normal. So we thought, it would be one way and it was different. And that's what's normal for them.
Exactly. So if you take nothing else away from this episode, the tagline for the week is things are good. Remember that. We'll be back next week with something new to talk about. Probably not a beer episode next week, but we'll be back on Tuesday morning on our normal upload time. In the meantime, follow us on the socials at Dewey Pod Monster. Make sure to like us, review us, and on any podcast platform. And also, if you'd like to leave us a message, you can do so at anchor.fm/Dewey Pod Monster. Pretty sure I got that right this time. If you want to leave that on there, leave a message on there, by all means, we will read that on the air, or go over that on the air if you want, play it on the air, something like that. Also, if you, I'll try to drop option for questions the next time we do one of these beer episodes. But by all means, if you want to email us or tweet us or whatever, however you want to reach out, don't wait for me to post it. If you have a question you want us to address, we can do it at any point. Sean, you want to go ahead and plug your plugs?
Yeah, you can find me at youtube.drafttherapy.com. I mostly do Michigan beer reviews, but I've done several different Three Floyds beers. I talk about Michigan beer primarily, and we'll have by the time this goes live, we'll have a video up on our Michigan mandatory breweries. We're looking to expand that, so if you have any suggestions, reach out to me on my YouTube channel, Draft Therapy. And, you can find me there twice a week, at the very least.
All right, guys. Well, again, things are good. Have fun. Have a good weekend. We'll talk to you soon. This is John. I am the host of the Dewey Pod Monster, and with me is Sean. This is getting worse and worse every time.
You want to start it over?
Sean, no, let's just roll with it at this point. Fuck.